Hello, welcome to another lesson for the Life in the UK test. Today we're looking at all sorts of things, focusing on the British population, religion, and all things sports. The UK today looks very different compared to just a century ago. It's now a vibrant, multicultural country influenced by immigration, particularly after World War II, and continuing to evolve. Around 1 in 10 people have a parent or grandparent from outside the UK. The UK spans just over 870 miles or just over 1,400 kilometres from top to bottom, from John O'Groats in Scotland to Land's End in England. Despite its relatively small size, there's immense regional variety. While it's heavily urbanised, large areas are still countryside, and these rural areas are key for tourism. People go walking, fishing, and camping. Each of the UK's four nations has its own identity and cultural elements. For example, they have their own patron saint and a day of celebration. Only Scotland and Northern Ireland have these days as official holidays, but all are marked by cultural events, parades, and festivals. These days help reinforce national pride and cultural identity, especially among communities with roots in these nations. So we've got St. George for England on the 23rd of April, St. Andrew for Scotland on the 30th of November, St. David for Wales on the 1st of March, and St. Patrick for Northern Ireland on the 17th of March. Language in the UK isn't just about English, though English dominates. It's spoken with a wide range of accents and local expressions. Welsh is spoken by many in Wales and is taught in Welsh schools. Scottish Gaelic is used in parts of the Highlands, and Irish Gaelic is spoken in some areas of Northern Ireland. The 2021 consensus found that the most common languages other than English were Polish, Romanian, Punjabi, and Urdu. Thanks to medical advances and better living standards, more people are living into their 80s and beyond. While this is a positive sign of progress, it also puts pressure on healthcare services and pensions. Population growth is also being influenced by immigration. Most of the UK's population lives in England, around 84%. In Wales, there is around 5%, and in Scotland, just over 8%, and in Northern Ireland, less than 3%. And the way that I remember it, you can see I have added some notes here on the map, is 5% in Wales plus 3% in Northern Ireland equals 8% in Scotland, and then obviously you've got the rest being 84% in England. Modern UK society includes people from all over the world. Large cities, especially London, reflect this with significant Asian, Black, and mixed heritage communities. Surveys often use broad ethnic categories like white, including people of European, North American, and Australasian origin, but real-world identity is often much more complex. And this diversity influences food, festivals, religion, and culture. The Equality Act tries to protect people from discrimination based on gender, race, religion, and other characteristics. Progress is clear. Women have more access to education and leadership than in the past, and ethnic minorities are increasingly represented in politics and public life, but challenges remain. Women still face a gender pay gap and are underrepresented in top leadership roles. Ethnic minorities often experience barriers in employment and higher rates of discrimination and unequal treatment in the justice system. So, while the legal framework is strong, true equality in practice is still a work in progress. Listed here are some examples of charities which reflect Britain's strong tradition of volunteering and civic support. For example, Age UK, NSPCC, the National Trust, the Red Cross, Historic Environment Scotland, and National Citizen Service. Diversity in the UK also extends to religion. Christianity has shaped many UK institutions and holidays. As you can tell, I'm a big fan of creating mind maps and the like, so I hope this infographic helps. In England, the Church of England, a Protestant denomination, is a state church. The monarch is its symbolic head. The spiritual leader of the Church of England is the Archbishop of Canterbury. They can be selected by the monarch, however, usually they are selected by the Prime Minister and a church committee. In Scotland, the Church of Scotland plays a similar role, but has a different structure. Wales and Northern Ireland have no official national church, though many people still attend Christian churches or belong to other denominations like Catholicism, Methodism, or Quakerism. Other than Christianity, people living in the UK have a variety of faiths, including Islam, Hinduism, Sikhism, Judaism, and Buddhism. The law protects everyone's right to practice or not to practice any religion. The number of people identifying as non-religious has grown significantly. See the details on the slide from the 2009 Citizenship Survey quoted in the Life in the UK 2025 edition. However, it's worth noting that in the 2021 consensus, fewer than half of people identified as Christian, so a major shift from previous generations. The UK has several official public holidays, known as bank holidays. These include Christmas Day, Boxing Day, and New Year's Day, as well as Good Friday, which is Jesus' death, and Easter Sunday, his rising from the dead. Easter Monday is celebrated as a continuation of the Easter celebrations, extending the joy of Jesus' resurrection. Before Lent starts, we have Shrove Tuesday or Pancake Day, and then Lent begins on Ash Wednesday, 40 days before Easter. This is when people fasted. England and Wales generally share the same holidays, but Scotland and Northern Ireland have some different ones, for example, St Andrew's Day in Scotland and St Patrick's Day in Northern Ireland. Some holidays are religious, others are secular, but most people enjoy time off work and school. Here we have a number of other key dates. Notably, on July 12th, Northern Ireland remembers the Battle of the Boyne, fought in 1690 between the Protestant King William III and the deposed Catholic King James II, with William's victory securing Protestant rule in Britain and Ireland. On November 5th, Bonfire Night marks the failed gunpowder plot of 1605, when Guy Fawkes attempted to blow up Parliament. People celebrate with fireworks and bonfires. Another key tradition is Remembrance Day, where we honor those who died in wars, particularly World War I and II. People wear red poppies and observe a 2-minute silence on November 11th. And then there are obviously other religious holidays that some people in the UK celebrate, including Diwali, the Festival of Lights, celebrated by Hindus and Sikhs. Then there's Hanukkah, which is 8 days long in November, December, celebrated by Jews. Eid al-Fitr is the end of Ramadan for Muslims, and Eid al-Adha is the commitment to God, where Muslims remember the Prophet Ibrahim's willingness to sacrifice his son when God ordered him to. And the Sikhs celebrate Vaisakhi on April 14th. They celebrate 1699, the year when Sikhism was established. And sorry for mispronouncing some of these probably. Sport is a big part of life in the UK. Football is by far the most popular, with clubs like Manchester United and Liverpool followed worldwide. England's men's team had their biggest success in 1966, when they won the FIFA World Cup on home soil. The women's team, known as the Lionesses, have achieved more recently. In 2022, they became European champions after beating Germany at Wembley. They also reached the World Cup final in 2023, finishing runner-up after losing to Spain, showing how strong women's football is becoming in the UK. Horse racing is one of Britain's oldest sports, with roots going back to Roman times. It has always had close ties to royalty, with events often attended by the royal family. The UK has racecourses across the country, and the most famous races include Royal Ascot in Berkshire, the Grand National at Aintree in Liverpool, and the Scottish Grand National at Ayr. There's also a National Horse Racing Museum in Newmarket, Suffolk, the historic home of the sport. Modern tennis developed in England in the late 19th century, and the first club was set up in Leamington Spa in 1872. Britain is home to the most famous tennis tournament in the world, Wimbledon. Wimbledon is the oldest tournament, the only Grand Slam played on grass, and is held every summer in London. The Grand Slam as a whole includes the Australian Open, the French Open, Wimbledon, and the US Open. The UK hosts a Formula One Grand Prix every year, attracting huge crowds. Britain has produced several world champions, including Damon Hill, Jenson Button, and Lewis Hamilton. This shows the UK's long tradition and success in motor racing. Also, sailing has deep roots in Britain, reflecting the country's strong maritime history. In the 1960s, Sir Francis Chichester became the first person to sail solo around the world, and shortly after, Sir Robin Knox Johnston achieved the same feat without stopping. One of the most famous sailing events is Cowes Week, held on the Isle of Wight. Rowing is also very popular, both recreationally and competitively. The most famous rowing event is the annual Oxford versus Cambridge boat race on the River Thames, which attracts large audiences. The UK is also the birthplace of some other sports. Cricket originated in England, with Lord's in London considered the home of cricket. Rugby also began in England at rugby school, later dividing into rugby union and rugby league. Golf originated in Scotland, with St Andrews known as the home of golf. Another thing some British people like to do is skiing. Although the UK only has 5 ski centres in Scotland, it does have Europe's longest dry ski slope in Edinburgh. The UK has a long tradition of hosting major international sporting events. The Olympic Games have actually been held here 3 times, in 1908, 1948, and most recently in 2012, when London became the first city to host the modern Olympics 3 times. The 2012 Games were particularly memorable because London also hosted the Paralympic Games that same year. The Paralympics actually have their roots in Britain. They were inspired by Dr. Sir Ludwig Guttmann, a German refugee who came to the UK. He encouraged patients with spinal injuries to take part in sporting activities, which eventually grew into the Paralympic movement. This brings us to the end of the lesson. Here's an overview. As usual, in the notes you can find further resources. I hope to see you again in the next lesson. Until then, bye bye.